Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the 4Point podcast. I'm Eric Stevens, the Vice President of Marketing with 4Point. In today's episode, I'm going to tell you a story. It's a story that goes back in time, that's central to human civilization, and that takes us all around the world. And it's a story that is particularly relevant to work that I've been doing for the last 30, almost 40 years. And hopefully it's relevant to the kinds of things that you do. And it starts in ancient Sumeria, in what is now Iran, in what is called Mesopotamia. And there was an ancient civilization called Sumer. And the Sumerians developed some amazing technology for the time. That technology was writing. They developed the ability to create alphabetic text and record those on clay tablets. And this foundational technology allowed us as human beings to do a whole lot of really, really interesting things. And I want to share with you one particular example of this early form of writing, this early technology that transformed human endeavor for 4,000 years. Let me share my screen and I want to show you something. So what we've got here is what's called a cuneiform tablet. And this is a small clay tablet that was fired and held the imagery that you see here, which is pressed in with a stick, a stylus, okay, a triangular shaped tool that was used to make these indentations. To give you a sense of scale, this actual tablet is about 1 inch by 1 inch. So it's a very, very small thing and very, very clustered with the writings. You see those little markings on there, they're called cuneiform. They're one of the original writing languages that was invented by human civilization. This particular tablet is almost 4,000 years old, and it represents some of the first things that we started to put down when we learned how to write. Now, often people think of writing and they think of the great stories that humans have developed over time. And certainly the Sumerians were excellent for that. The foundational stories of Gilgamesh and Enkidu are central to human endeavor, and they really capture the tragedy and the triumph of the human spirit. But this tablet, this is not a tablet that is a story. The other thing that the Sumerians did when they used cuneiform and their language is they wrote down the laws of their civilization. In the Louvre in Paris, France, there is the Stele of Hammurabi, which has the codes of Hammurabi written in this same language that encompass one of the first examples of civilization's laws written down. And they're foundational because they're some of the first examples that we have of laws where you are innocent until proven guilty, that people have to have evidence, that the punishment must fit the crime. All written down in 1750 BC. But that was written down about 250 years after this tablet was produced. So this tablet and the collections like it at various universities around the world, and we have about 500,000 examples of this kind of writing from various different civilizations over a period of 1,000 years, where cuneiform was written from multiple different languages. There's multiple museums. This particular example comes from Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And besides being one of the oldest examples of this writing, and besides being foundational to human civilization, I'll explain that more in a bit, this particular tablet is really fascinating because it was taken by Sonny Carter, who is an astronaut with NASA, and this was actually flown on the Space Shuttle Discovery. That tablet is the oldest human artifact to have flown in space. That makes it special in so many different ways. It's foundational in demonstrating writing. It's foundational in demonstrating the growth of civilization. It's foundational because it's the oldest human artifact in space. But what it also is this particular document is a record of a transaction. This is a requisition form. This is a form. The oldest human artifact to have traveled in space is actually a form where messengers asked for goods so that they could travel to another city. Here you see what is actually written on that tablet. And this is one example, and I picked this because it had gone into space and because it's one of the oldest examples we've got. But there are literally millions of these examples that we know of from different writings across civilization. And it's because the forms are the foundation of civilization. We wrote these kinds of documents before we could write. Before we invented writing, people were using symbols on clay objects to represent transactions, to represent the records of an activity, to encompass commerce, to encompass laws and civilization. This tablet represents the foundational element of the growth of human civilization. This tablet, this form, this record represents the kinds of things that people need to do so that they can write down the great stories of human civilization, so that we can create laws, so that we can have the records of the punishments that were given because people transgressed the laws, so that we can write down the laws. We had these kinds of documents and forms before we had writing, before we had anything else, because they are essential. What does this mean for us? This means that the forms that you're dealing with today are not only critical to your business, they're not only critical to the way that you interact with your customers, they're the foundational element to keep all of commerce operational, because they're storing the data that we need to use to know what to do. They're the record of the data that we need so that we know we did something. They're used to move things around. I can take this tablet, fill it out in one place, go to another place, hand it to them. They can now read it and give me the items I've requested. So they engender then that business process, that operational flow. They're the records of the laws that we've enacted. They are the foundational element of civilization. That makes them absolutely critical. So the next time that you're looking at how you're going to transform your business operations and you're looking at forms and go, oh, those aren't the important bits. Remember that tablet. Remember that 4,000-year-old object, the oldest human artifact to go into space, is a form, was a form, and was critical to all human civilization. That form that you're dealing with today is critical to what you do, but it's critical to what everyone does. And we need to migrate these effectively to new technologies. We don't use clay tablets anymore today, but we're still struggling with the transition from paper. So that's the story I wanted to tell you today of a 4,000-year-old tablet that is a form, the oldest human artifact in space. In the next episode, I want to talk about how we transition from the technology we use today, which is paper, to the technologies that we should be using, the digital technologies, the web technologies, the browser technologies, so that we can free ourselves from the limitations of paper while embracing the overall function that paper brings to us, and why it is so difficult to make that transition. Thank you, and I'll talk to you next week.